Hello everybody. I thought a session on the most effective way to pass Pascal strings to a function might be helpful for everybody. Even though core foundation strings and NS strings are considered much better because they don't have the size limitation and they don't have the content limitation of Pascal strings. I know Pascal strings have been around for a very long time and certainly people are still using them, but I notice people use them in what I would call very casual ways, and they may not be getting the most effective generated code. So let's start off with a simple function called concatenate string number 1, and all it does is basically takes two strings, string 1 and string 2, concatenates them, and returns a string. And you'll notice also that it checks the length of each string to make sure the combined length is not greater than 255 characters. So easy, right? So let's look and see what code gets generated when we write our function that way and we call that function. Okay, so here's what gets generated. First of all, our string that comes in, it has to get copied via this function to S1, and then our string 2 has to get copied to string 2, and those are basically PS string copy is more or less just a wrapper for block move data or mem move. And then because we're having to handle a returned Pascal string from a function, we have to deal with our string stack, which is what manages that. So those two statements are there. So already we've got an extra essentially 4 statements that we didn't code in our FB code but had to get generated in order to support this. And notice also that PS length, that's the generated call to the internal function for length. And 2 more statements that probably we could eliminate are the decrement of the string stack and then the return and the call to PS string copy and the use of the global variable for the string stack. Now, a lot of this can be eliminated, and admittedly this will execute very quickly. But consider all the extra code in here. We've got this, we've got PS length twice, and we've got these 2 lines of code. If this little utility function were called 100 or 1,000 times while an app is being used, the time could mount up. So, and obviously as you add things to your code, things start running slower, and this is one way to optimize some of your code. So let's look at how we could do this differently. And what I would suggest to you is the following. First of all, instead of passing full strings, pass a pointer to the string, and that's reflected in this syntax. So we pass string 1 as a pointer, just a little up caret there, that's what that means, pointer. And then for the out string, we're actually going to pass in a pointer to a variable that we want this function to fill in for us when it's done. So here's all we do. We say if s1.nil, so we dereference the pointer, so we check the length of the first string plus the length of the second string, and then if it's less than that, we set outString.nil equal to the combination of the two. So what kind of code does that generate? Look at the difference. This is the full code that it generates. We still have some PS string copies for actually doing the concatenation. But notice the difference between that and this. We don't have any of this. We don't have this. We don't have this. And we don't have the PS length calls because we're referring to the length byte directly by looking at character 0 to check the length. And you can see how this gets called. Concatenate strings T1, T2, here's T1, T2, and then if you do concatenate strings 2, you can see we pass the address using the @ sign. So you can really cut down on the amount of code you're generating which means the amount of time it takes your code to execute simply by passing pointers into functions and doing it this way instead of this way. So if there's anything I can answer about this, feel free to post on the list, and I'll do my best to address it. Thank you very much.